Hi, I'm Zan. I'm senior developer at CarePlanner, where I make APIs, and I'm a big lurker of PHP Southwest. Sorry, had to put that in. We're going to talk about community, and each and every one of you belong to a community, whether it's the town or city that you live in, with neighbors, schools, shops. Maybe you go with your local group scuba diving. That's Chris, by the way. Everyone point at that. Oh, you scuba dive. I probably had this talk when I was drunk before, so. Or even maybe you go to meetups. Maybe you just see friends or anything, but unfortunately, in its generic dictionary definition term, it really doesn't make any sense when you think about the communities you live in. So there are many groups, communities around the world, and they probably generally adhere to three different points. First is commonality, which is the building block for all communities. I mean, if you didn't like the same things, you probably wouldn't be friends with them. The next is communication. And something like what I'm talking about with Symfony requires a great deal of communication and hard work and conscious and deliberate effort. The most important of all, after you've got those two building blocks, is human connection. Commonality and connection combine in a way that enables people to connect in other ways that is more than just talking. It's more than sending emails or making pull requests like many of you already do. It's something that cannot be explained by its individual parts. For example, if I communicated this picture to you, it probably doesn't mean much. But human connection is what takes something of little or downright strange things and builds an entire community of 117,000 people on a subreddit dedicated to bread stapled to trees. It's a real thing. You can look it up. Human connection is what makes the weird and the wonderful and sometimes the really weird to happen. Every community is nothing without the communication and connection of its members, and Symfony is one that got this right. I can't read the text. It's so small. Wait a minute. Oh, that's so much better. I can read now. Yes. Symfony. As we explore Symfony, probably the best place to start is the website, and this is the definition for Symfony's community, which is now obsolete because I complained on GitHub and they changed it today. So ignore that. This is reflected around statistics around the web. There's 10,000 likes on Facebook, which, to be honest, is a weird place to have Symfony. There's 18,000 stars on GitHub. 7,000 people subscribe to the support channel on Slack, which means there is a lot of messages, and you miss a lot of them. 32,000 people follow Symfony on Twitter. 60,000 questions on on Stack Overflow tagged with Symfony. And on Packagist, of the 15 top most popular packages, 7 of them are from Symfony, which is pretty awesome when you think of how big PHP is. The community is pretty amazing when you think about it. It's a healthy community, and people really do like being part of it. Most of this is because of the efforts by the Symfony leadership, by its code of conduct, and it's now got a new team dedicated to upholding the code of conduct, which basically means Symfony is less about the code and more about the community. It's putting human beings first. And one of the care team members is Michelle Sanver. Some of you may know her, but she's not that massive in some communities that I'm part of. So it's basically, Symfony community is a bunch of people passionate about programming. We're not a very diverse group, but we all care about it, which is great. We have had to handle some code of conduct cases, but I can happily report that there are all considerably relatively minor in our eyes, which, considering some of the cases that have in the last year of some PHP groups, like Drupal, I don't want to say Drupal's bad, but there were some bad cases from some outliers in the group. Doesn't mean the group Drupal is bad, though. This is specifically for Slack. There was someone I spoke to, and they like how all the new members will generally follow the good examples of the older or veteran members of Slack, which, when you think about how bad the internet can be, is pretty damn good. Contributing to Symfony means contributing to the success of the framework, and following the Symfony philosophy, which I think has also changed today as well, so ignore that as well. If you try and improve the experiences of other PHP developers, then you're basically promoting the Symfony philosophy. So I missed a step. Never mind. If you try and improve the lives of other PHP developers, then you're contributing to Symfony's philosophy, whether you think you're a part of Symfony or not. And yeah. Contributing is not some binary identity where you begin as a non-contributor and then something happens. You do something, you pass some point in life, and then thereafter you're a contributor and you'll never go back. Contributing is a behavior, not a process. Obviously, when I mean contributing to Symfony, most people think of pull requests. They're an easy place to start. All are welcome within reason. We're not like Linus Torvalds. We don't shut down, like, you can't do this because it's pointless. My first pull request ever to Symfony was deleting someone else's code. And my last pull request was fixing someone else's typo. Nothing's too small. Like, one letter. It's got accepted. It's good. You can do it. Yeah. There's a help wanted label, and people actively want people to do pull requests, get involved, and do better. And they try and include everyone. What point was that? No. I skipped ahead and I can't do it. Oh, no. When I was at Dutch PHP conference, I saw the keynote by Thijs Verin. I'm really sorry if I got his name wrong. He spoke about opportunity and just going for things that you want to do. That was 14 weeks ago. And 16 weeks after that talk, I'm going to be giving a keynote at Symfony, which is probably the worst thing I've ever agreed to do. And I will be up there with absolutely no public speaking experience, as you could probably tell, dangerously close to a panic attack. But the Symfony organizers made the effort to give me an opportunity. They have never seen any of my material. They don't know if I'm any good. They've got a general idea of what this talk title is going to be, and that's it. And they went, yeah, that's fine. Be a keynote speaker. Terrible idea. Don't ever do it. But this is mainly because of their diversity initiative, where they want newer people, younger people, people of different backgrounds to get involved, because it will benefit people's perspective and how they see things. But enough with the obvious. Talking is the most obvious thing to do. It's not the easiest, by the way. But there's other things that you can do other than speaking. Ryan Weaver, massively known in Symfony for writing, pretty much rewrote the entire documentation for it a few years ago. He also started the Developer Experience Initiative to make developers' lives easier. And most of people's perceptions of Symfony are because of this person. Not many people will know Javier, mainly because I don't think anyone knows what he looks like. But every week for the last 11 years, he's wrote a blog post about Symfony, what's happened, what pull requests have been made, what new features, and promoting other people's content about Symfony, which is amazing because I would have given up after about a year. And the next one, Anne-Sophie, is basically as the events and marketing manager, I think. She's been behind the scenes of every single Symfony event that I've been to in the last, actually no, I've only been to one. So every single Symfony event I've ever been to, she's been behind the scenes, like making it all run. There are hundreds of other people that I should mention, but don't have time for. And because I can't find their real names, they have like GitHub profiles. But there are so many ways you can contribute to a project like Symfony or Drupal or WordPress if you really wanted to, without writing a single line of code. Most importantly, translations. You don't have to know another language to translate. There are some of the best contributors to projects are people who promote good communication, inclusive language, and because of that, members thrive when they feel like they're being involved. This conference that I'm going to, this user group in Bristol, it's in England, we're all speaking English, but this isn't the case anywhere, everywhere, including Sensio Labs, which makes Symfony. They're all in French, which is great because they don't generally speak in French on GitHub, so everyone can understand them, especially me, who doesn't speak another language. There were official translations of the documentation, but it was just unfeasible to keep them up to date with French, Portuguese, Spanish, German, so they just gave up and everything is now in English. But you don't have to know a second language to help with translations because there are people that are struggling with English because they aren't fluent, and if you help them with their sentence structure or getting their point across, that's translating. If you see comments, a lot of people will make comments and then people will reply really quickly because they don't have time, and it will be something like, you're not making any sense. But if you just, maybe, I don't understand, think you mean blah, or try blah, let me know if I've misunderstood you. Understand that someone speaking may not have English as their second language, and instead of being accusational, try, oh, I think you're looking for something else rather than this. Here's a link to the documentation. It's a really nice way of being polite and inclusive, but you can still palm them off. Here's a link, don't bother me again. But you're still being polite, it's great. It's little changes in speech that take the tone of the conversation from accusational to constructive. Most of people know this basic manners, but somehow there's a lot of people on the internet that it gets lost on. But if you do more of this, especially on GitHub or Slack or things that kind of represent the project you're on, it helps people make a difference to people who are still learning PHP or getting to grips with a framework. Makes a difference to people who don't know the terminology from a formal computer education, computer science education, like myself. I dropped out of university. I don't really know the technical terminology for a lot of things, but I kind of get by asking Google what they mean. But if people just use simple English, it'll be a lot easier. It makes a difference to people who are learning an entirely new spoken language just to get the point where they can simply interact with your community. That's a massive point. I think I mentored someone from the Philippines for a short while, and they were learning English just so they could so I could help them, which is, to be honest, way more effort than I was ever putting in. Community reviews. There's a pull request for Symfony that was opened at the beginning of May, and it still hasn't been merged, mainly because there are 2,500 pull requests and 1,500 issues made in 2008 just for Symfony, and there are only 19 people doing it. You can make this job a little easier because Symfony wants you to get involved by reviewing pull requests and issues and mediating them so the reviewers can do it just a little bit quicker. There's a whole section on it, community reviews, why you should do it, and most importantly, if you go up one level, there is an entire section of everything you can do to contribute to Symfony, which you should all do. And another way of contributing to Symfony is not contribute to Symfony at all. If you start writing PHP tests to improve the language, you're improving Symfony, Drupal, WordPress, other frameworks like Zend or Laravel. I'm sure there's something else which I've forgotten. But they're really easy. They're basically a text file with description, some PHP code, what you expect to happen. If you can find an issue for PHP, you can write a test for it. It's that easy. Some people only focus on improving the code, which, to be honest, is a good thing. If you can make something better, do it. But if you want to improve a community, focus on people and not code. Nurturing the right relationships is how people basically improve their future, how they can drive which way the future is going. And getting to know people through code, which is probably something that we are all good at because we're all antisocial, because we're all in this industry. Giving means to give without expectation, to give based on someone else's needs without assuming something will come back to you in return. And at the end of the day, the absolute worst case scenario is that you will have a positive impact on somebody through your actions, and as a human, that should just make you feel good. If it doesn't, then that's not your fault. If you can give without expectation, however, you've got everything to gain because you don't expect anything back. It's a brilliant mindset to have, and especially for the open source community, but this only applies to your expectations. That doesn't mean you shouldn't ever get anything back. I wouldn't expect anyone to remain in the open source community if they were constantly asked to give and give and give and never got anything back. Connecting with people, provide something they're interested in and give them a reason to show it to others. Human connection, the desire to see and be seen, is what powers involvement in communities. It's completely okay to want recognition for your achievements. It's okay to want to be selfish once in a while. Asking for help on Stack Overflow is probably, arguably, a selfish thing to do. You want someone to answer your question. But that doesn't mean it doesn't benefit every other developer that comes along later on, views your question, and sees the same answers. Contributing, whether to see it, Symfony, PHP, or some other project, is an investment in your own personal development. You're open sourcing your learning process by leveraging the power of the entire community to tell you what you want to know. Your involvement in the community has long-term benefits. It got me a slot at this keynote, surprisingly, and it allowed me to practice in front of you, which is great, and hopefully all your feedback is going to be okay, yeah? It also allowed me to ask other members of the community for basically all of the quotes I've got in this thing. So it looks like I've done loads of research, but I basically just went and asked a couple of people. It gave me their input, their feedback, their reviews, their support, and it all shaped this talk. Giving this talk will probably benefit me in the long term with improved job prospects, providing I don't completely mess up at the end of this month. And the open source community is a global one. Those job prospects aren't just going to be in Bristol. I could go over to Canada and probably get jobs over there. That would be pretty good. Talking about contributing to the open source community, we have to talk about imposter syndrome. I've got it right now. It's terrifying. Natalie, not even going to try and pronounce that name. Natalie, founder of GopherCon EU, has spoken about imposter syndrome. Stephen Fry has even spent several pages in his autobiography talking about imposter syndrome. As an example closest to our industry, I want to share a piece of conversation I had with someone while preparing to give this talk. I can guarantee that not everyone in the room will have contributed to open source software. I know this, I haven't, and I'll be there. That conversation was with our very own Dave Lidman. Many people, even prominent figures like Dave, have probably contributed, like Dave, yeah. They've contributed more to the open source community through what they've done, and they haven't even touched a line of code. And many people dismiss indirect contributions to the wider community because they don't give directly to projects or code. Most developers are aware that hard-to-measure metrics in their applications are just as important as the easily identifiable ones. So why do we think it's different when it comes to ourselves? It's okay to get things wrong, it's okay to ask for help, and most importantly, it's okay to say, I can't do this, which is me, a pull request I did. It's okay to leave the community at any time for any reason. You're allowed to do that. Despite our best efforts not to spread ourselves too thin, burnout is a thing, and it can happen multiple times. Circumstances and situations beyond our control can happen, especially as human beings enter different stages of life. Even if you're lucky enough to avoid that, interests change and you can simply get bored, which I've done. Saying this isn't for me anymore, so I'm out, does not negate you as a person. It does not negate your past involvements and contributions, and it doesn't mean you can't come back at a later date if you want to. Your health as an individual is more important than the community, other people's expectations, or open source. Me. Because that's important. You need to know that. As a minor but very important note, I recommend everyone check out Open Sourcing Mental Illness, and that you pass that recommendation on to anyone that will listen. It could be the most important thing you tell them without even realizing it. You'll find most communities you're involved with will interlink to some degree, whether you're reusing skills you've learned or learning experience interacting with people. Our very own Kat Zien has given 2 talks, one on Golang, nothing to do with PHP, and the other one was on really bad design trends from the 1990s, nothing to do with PHP, but they were all brilliant. The community you are part of, it was good. Yeah. The communities you're a part of should evolve and grow as you do as a person. If your community doesn't do that, then maybe it's time to move on. Once you've found a community that is good and you're comfortable with, use it as a platform to branch out and expand your horizons. As a regular visitor to Vancouver, I've tried many times to go to Vancouver PHP. And providing I don't mess anything up, this November I'm going to go to my first PHP user group on another continent. Simply because I've been here and I want to do more. But the contents of my slides are not the most important thing. You are. Like, this talk will finish and end, but you are the important parts in your community. Each and every one of you are already participating community members just by showing up here. So if you remember anything as you leave this talk, remember that if you show genuine interest, the capacity to learn, and the willingness to contribute constructively, then the Symfony /PHP /WordPress /everything you do community will be there for you. And this community will help you make a difference. This is where I would finish my keynote, but I'm not the keynote. I love Symfony and I love the community, but it doesn't compare to the group in this room. The organizers, Lee, and everyone else, and everyone here have made PHP Southwest so good. It's brilliant. I love coming to PHP Southwest since I came to Bristol 3 years ago. I have terrible social anxiety. But I know that I can come up to any single one of you with a question, and you'll be happy to discuss it with me. So just take a look around and realize how awesome this community is. Now I've finished. I haven't lied this time. Oh my God, you ran an hour.